Welcome to Sci-Fi Quantum Archives. Don't forget to like, subscribe and explore. It started with a sidewalk map. 3 hours before sunrise, inside a fourth-floor office that hadn't seen fresh paint in 10 years, someone rotated their chair, leaned closer to a dual-monitor screen, and frowned. Zoning records lined up clean through most of the district, except for one block, wedged between a convenience store and a shuttered laundromat, where the satellite image showed cracked pavement and a plastic-wrapped chain-link fence. Nothing stood there, just gravel and weed clusters pressed down by time. Yet the building schematics showed occupancy. Not pending construction. Not historical overlay. Occupied. 6 floors. HVAC registered. Electrical tagged. Elevators marked as functional. At first, it felt like a clerical error. Cross-reference tools sometimes pulled artifacts from older builds, especially when city renovations overlapped archived blueprints. But clicking through surveillance feeds from the deli across the street revealed something else. A rectangle of concrete, surrounded by traffic noise and idle teenagers, stood in its usual silence, but the camera's time-stamped playback told a different story. The structure wasn't still. Floor 6 hadn't been there 2 days earlier. Backtracking took time. Each camera loaded in compressed sequences, seconds jittering past with that familiar washout glow of urban surveillance. 72 hours prior, the camera caught only scaffolding, a rusted shell climbing to 5 floors. 3 days before that, 4 floors. Rewind again. 3. The intervals held. No visible crew. No materials delivered. Nothing carried, lifted, or bolted. No beams swung in from cranes. The building just appeared. Not all at once. Layered. As if construction had occurred between frames, hidden in those brief skips where nothing moved. A break room microwave pinged behind his back, but no one entered. A draft passed beneath the server cabinet, lifting a forgotten sticky note. He pulled the note off the carpet and stared at it for too long. 3 weeks of footage went into offline storage that morning. No email. No ticket. Just raw files dragged into a folder titled with an internal code and a single word. Review. The usual protocol required disclosure if a property discrepancy involved active infrastructure. But something about the silence surrounding that lot, about the way nothing reflected in person, scratched against his ribs. He'd walked by that corner dozens of times. Not once had anything vertical crossed his line of sight. Mid-morning sun eventually cut through the blinds. Dust hung between window panes. Across the room, fluorescent bulbs buzzed harder than usual. No one had come in yet. For the first time in months, he didn't file a report. Didn't notify legal. Didn't tag the anomaly with GIS software or request drone confirmation. Instead, he loaded the footage again. Slowed it. Let it breathe frame by frame. There it was. Floor 6, growing just above the shadow line, reflected in a passing car window. A floor every 72 hours. Not approximate. Not average. Exact. No matter which camera feed or which street angle, the timestamps aligned. Always 72. It became a rhythm, but not one anyone else seemed to hear. No concrete mixers. No scaffolding clang. No movement at all. Only the structure, frame by frame, inching skyward through a filter of digital haze. Something that wasn't there stepping closer without footstep. Each file played differently depending on the lens. A corner liquor store captured a wider shot. The gas station across the block offered a cleaner resolution. But none showed life around the building. Just a shape, growing in increments, casting shadows on objects that didn't respond. Cars drove past. Pedestrians walked by without a glance. Birds flew across its silhouette yet never curved their flight. Light bent to it. Wind ignored it. A wall of cameras surrounded that lot. Not by design, but by accident, every business in that radius had installed their own cheap system. Different vendors. Different storage methods. And every single one showed the same impossible construction sequence. Overlays lined up with no drift. Even motion blur had the same sharp edge, like the structure had been dropped into footage after filming. Yet it hadn't. No signs of tampering. Metadata clean. Compression consistent. After 3 nights of manual logging, the file was finally sent up. No subject line. Just an ID number and access link. It landed in a supervisor's inbox sometime after lunch, sandwiched between a pest control invoice and a parking dispute. 3 hours later, it returned unread with a single note below the reply. Codec issue. Looks like glitch stacking. Archive it. No one followed up. Someone else noticed. Not by intention. Just someone who happened to be inside the room when the footage ran again. A desk near the back. Unpaid. Folding chair. Wide eyes. Fingers twitching near the trackpad. Watched the time-lapse loop twice before asking if it was a simulation test. The response was a shrug. By morning, the footage had been clipped, compressed, re-rendered, and uploaded using the free Wi-Fi behind the building. No tags. No title. Just a caption. Found this. No idea what it is. 17 views in the first hour. 65 by lunch. A few comments. A few reposts. Most people thought it was a concept reel, maybe part of an alternate reality game. Someone said the shadows were too clean. Another argued the reflection meant it had to be real. Nobody agreed on anything except one thing. Every time the building added a floor, something about the footage felt colder. Not the temperature. Something else. Like it remembered being watched. A few usernames with long histories and no profile photos passed it around. Someone on a demolition subthread called it a feed anomaly. Another insisted the building wasn't new, just underreported. An old mall extension, maybe. One account suggested it had appeared in a previous city before being paved over. No confirmation. The original post vanished 2 days later. The video link remained. Locals began showing up with phones. Middle-aged man in cargo shorts filming across his windshield. College student crouching near a bus stop, hands shaking slightly as she zoomed. A couple with matching jackets stood there for 10 full minutes recording silence. Nothing came up. Every video showed the lot exactly as remembered. Chain fence, exposed soil, plastic bags pinned beneath a drainage grate. No structure. No outline. Not even a shimmer. But across the street, where the frozen yogurt shop's camera faced west, the floors kept climbing. The discrepancy grew louder in silence. Restaurant staff started locking their side doors earlier. A florist 2 blocks east replaced her window displays twice in 1 week, saying colors looked off. Pets resisted leashes anywhere near the alley behind the lot. Motion sensors at the tailors lit up 3 times a night, always at the same hour, always with no one visible. One employee left his phone camera running during inventory. The footage later showed a shape moving past the glass, reflected in a tea kettle. Those who worked close began mentioning headache. Not migraines, those came with warning signs. These were sudden, sharp, like someone had snapped rubber bands behind their eyes. Some brushed it off. Others bought new lamp. A woman in an upstairs office blamed the flickering on ballast decay and unscrewed the bulb herself. Still, the pain came back every time her monitor faced the lot. Sleep went first. Deep sleep. Real sleep. The kind that doesn't break into awareness before morning. It turned light. Shallow. Interruptive. Faces on pillows before dawn. Long pauses in thought during normal routines. A mechanic on River Street installed a new alarm system after the 3rd night of waking with grease-stained hands and no memory of getting out of bed. Security footage still confirmed nothing. The lot remained untouched in person. Grass bent in the usual direction. Air smelled like burnt engine oil and fried food. Nothing special. But when the recordings rolled, small details shifted. Light patterns moved without clouds. Leaves along the sidewalk paused before lifting. Shadows misaligned. Not by much. Just enough to notice. Nobody said anything with certainty. Nobody made calls. But doors started locking earlier, eyes moved faster past that corner, and across every screen in that block. The building stood taller than it had the day before. No alarm went off when she failed to show up for work. It wasn't unusual for someone to skip a morning shift without warning, especially on that street. The landlord knocked once, then again, left a note wedged behind the meter box. Nothing came back. Mail collected by gravity. Lights off by dusk. No music through the wall. After 2 days, the call came from her sister, who lived across the state and hadn't heard from her since Sunday. The lock wasn't damaged. Groceries remained on the counter. Toothbrush dry. Phone still on the charger beside the bed. Everything pointed to a quick exit, maybe for coffee, maybe for air. Nothing stolen. No prints except her own. But someone reviewed the door camera, footage saved automatically to cloud storage through a cheap home monitoring app, and found something else. She walked out calmly, keys in hand, purse over shoulder, stepped off the porch and turned toward the lot. Camera timestamp matched the building's latest floor count, 9. She crossed the sidewalk, paused for a second, looked forward as if expecting traffic. No vehicles, no passers-by, no sound. Just a direct path between 2 dumpsters and chain-link fencing. Her image moved toward where the entrance should have been. She passed out of frame without turning. Nothing followed. No return. 3 blocks south, a man who ran a locksmith kiosk vanished that same week. Regular habit. Always closed at 8, walked home by 9. Spoke to a neighbor about replacing hinges. Promised to drop off a receipt in the morning. Never did. His security footage showed him leaving the lobby, locking the front gate, walking north toward the corner, same direction, same hour. A faint shape emerged on the horizon of the recording, something rectangular, faint lines that hadn't been in earlier footage. No motion. No signs of interaction. He walked toward it. After 5 steps, his form passed behind a delivery van. Never reappeared on the other side. The van never moved. Family members contacted authorities. A report was filed. Case numbers issued. Someone reviewed the footage on a departmental tablet. The camera's angle caught too much glare, they said. Lighting distortions. Frame rate inconsistencies. Data corruption. Someone mentioned video editing app. Said maybe the clips had been altered to match whatever internet rumor had been circling lately. Nothing was filed formally. But a detective who hadn't spoken much in meetings, who kept his screen brightness low and his ringtone off, requested a copy. Downloaded it. Disconnected from the precinct server. Stored it on an old drive without labels. 12 floors. That's what the footage showed on both tape. Matching height. Matching time. Matching sky conditions. 12 floors, no doors, and no one ever seen leaving. The janitor's cart rolled slower through the records wing than anywhere else. Something about the floor wax clung differently there, as if the tiles never dried right. Past midnight, no one monitored the internal network. No cameras in the lower hallway. Just stacks of unlabeled boxes, old wiring diagrams, lost grant applications, draft permits with signatures that didn't match any current department head. One computer stayed on. Never logged out, screen dimmed to preserve whatever someone had meant to archive but never finished. Curiosity didn't lead him there. Habit did. The hum of fluorescent light, the whir of a ceiling fan that never pointed in the right direction, the patternless beeping of a weather alert module on the window ledge, all of it created a rhythm that helped him stay grounded. He didn't sweep on that floor. Didn't vacuum. Just emptied bins and passed through. Until one night, while tossing an outdated floodplain report into a shred bin, his eye caught a paused video frame. No sound. No mouse movement. Just a freeze on a 17-minute clip, time-stamped 5 days earlier, showing 13 floors of a building he'd never seen. The posture shifted. Bins forgotten. Glove off. Chair pulled closer. He replayed it once. No idea what to expect. By the 3rd loop, pencil marks had already started on the back of a recycled complaint form. He didn't know what he was drawing at first. Angles without scale. Elevations without stair access. but something in the spacing tugged at a part of his memory that hadn't been used in years. 2 decades ago, he signed off his license. Not revoked, not suspended. Voluntarily retired after a miscalculation led to a fractured facade in a psychiatric wing scheduled for renovation. No one died, but a nurse lost her hand. He never returned to that site. Spent the next year removing traces of his name from anything tied to institutional construction. Refused to discuss anything built between 1978 and 1985. Still, his hand remembered proportions. Even blindfolded, he could still measure corridor widths to within 3 inches. Watching that building rise in timed intervals brought something back he hadn't thought about in 4 decades. The core layout matched. Not just in height or material use, but in sequence, foundation density, beam spacing, lintel transitions. The offset windows mirrored a facility blueprint he'd once studied for weeks, back when oversight boards were more concerned about patient traffic than thermal efficiency. It hadn't been a hospital. Not really. Technically a recovery center. But barbed wire ran across its inner perimeter, and some rooms didn't include door handles from the inside. Condon Ridge. Closed before demolition permits cleared. Official cause of shutdown never filed. A place removed from maps 1 year and from memory the next. He checked city archives the following night. No mention of Condon Ridge anywhere in the digital registry. But paper held what databases forgot. Dusty blueprint rolls with uneven spines. Binding threads loosened. Yellowed sheets too fragile to unroll without tearing. He didn't ask permission. Just sat there cross-legged with gloves that barely fit, unspooling what remained of a place the city refused to remember. Same column placement. Same room gaps. Same count of corner windows on the northern face. The building rising on camera wasn't being designed. It was being remembered. Condon Ridge was never supposed to stand again. Official documents listed it as condemned. 1 fire, 15 survivors, 3 partial witness statements. The final floor plan had been mislabeled as municipal storage and buried in a mislabeled blueprint case, beneath flood control sketches and decades-old proposals for a city rail extension that never materialized. But that shape, pulled from scorched pages and warped lines, matched exactly what the cameras had been showing for weeks. No deviation. No improvisation. Every window aligned. Every support beam accounted for. Even the rooftop service hatch, an element removed from public architecture after a lawsuit in '81, sat exactly where memory said it would. The surveillance feeds weren't just consistent. They were precise. Every added floor respected the original geometry. No deviation in material rendering. No misalignment across camera angles. Even the concrete discoloration that once ran through the Condon Ridge stairwells had reappeared in the same location, visible only in the third-floor footage pulled from a storefront ATM across the street. No noise distortion. No metadata drift. The cameras weren't glitching. They were documenting. What hadn't existed before now formed a perfect mirror of something demolished before most of the staff, still working in city planning, had graduated high school. It should have stopped there. A shape caught on tape. A blueprint repeating itself through some unnoticed error in digital infrastructure. But the silhouette changed. First, it was barely noticeable. A light shift on floor 11. Frame-by-frame analysis caught something behind the northern glass. No movement. No shape that could be explained. Just a suggestion, darker than the room behind it. The kind of mark cameras make when someone stands too still, long enough for compression algorithms to ignore it. 2 frames later, the window caught a light bounce from a passing bus, and the shadow shifted. There were no lights inside the building. Another week passed. 72 hours, another floor. 72 more, another again. Then the fire escape appeared. Not in person. No structure on site. No bolts drilled into a foundation. No concrete chipped away. But the footage had changed. Multiple feeds, multiple timestamps, multiple locations, each one now showing a welded frame bolted to the exterior of the building. Same rust patterns as the old plans. Same misaligned fourth step, bent inward from an emergency drill where a nurse lost her footing and cracked her jaw on the railing. None of the cameras captured it forming. It hadn't grown like the floors had. No transition. No presence in older clips. Just there, suddenly, as though it had always been part of the structure. Like memory had finally caught up to its absence. The lights stayed off. But in two of the feeds, during separate timestamps, something passed in front of a pane on floor 14. Not fast. Not dramatic. A kind of interruption, like someone pacing behind frosted glass, arms folded, eyes low. He went back to the blueprints. Not once. Not twice. Over and over. Sketched the hallway distances by hand. Measured window spacing against pixel ratios. Matched angles with reflections caught on rain-polished pavement. The footage wasn't random. Every new floor brought more accuracy. Every shadow fell closer to its recorded behavior from the old plans. Condon Ridge hadn't been rebuilt. It had been remembered with too much precision. Too much hunger. Enough to find its way into a building that didn't need doors to exist. Only footage. Only frames. Only watchers. The blackout started as a permissions error. One login failure, brushed off as server maintenance. Another denial the next hour. A third account disabled before lunch. No notification. No escalation trail. Just access revoked across the zoning department without a single call from IT. By end of day, 5 terminals had locked out completely. No files. No internal messages. No browsing history. Requests for the footage returned a blank field. Searches timed out. Cache folders wiped to 0. Even temporary backups, copies stored in remote sync intervals, displayed mismatch hashes and broken playback loop. Footage still opened, but frames were missing. Not corrupted. Not scrambled. Missing, as if no data had ever existed between timestamp. Days of building growth had been reduced to gap. Cutaways. Empty sky where concrete had stood the night before. The intern was gone before sunrise. Official line was a violation of disclosure terms. Someone cited unauthorized external uploads. No hearing. No appeal. A box of personal items appeared outside the elevator by noon. No one claimed to have packed it. Workstations were reassigned. Paper files removed for digitization. Department notices warned staff not to engage with unsanctioned footage. Terms like deepfake and manipulated metadata began appearing in internal briefings. Anyone still asking about the building was redirected to a non-emergency contact email that never replied. One copy remained untouched. Not digital. Not stored. Drawn. The sketches had become a second skin, layered over the janitor's schedule, lining the inside of his coat, pressed flat under his mattress. No color. Just pencil and ink and structural certainty. Elevation drawings traced by candlelight, cross-sections recreated from surveillance pauses and window traces. He hadn't been sleeping. Meals had become cold rituals. Voice rasped from disuse. None of it mattered. He'd traced the layout enough times to know where the locked rooms were. The ones not meant for storage. The ones not included in public schematic. The ones sealed off before the fire, back when silence passed for treatment. He folded the final page and slipped it between 2 loose bricks inside a service stairwell. If anyone found it, they wouldn't understand what they were looking at. That was fine. The detective's address took longer to track. No badge listed. No department number. No public photo. Just a name on a secondary report, half redacted, tied to a neighborhood missing 2 residents who had walked through a door that only existed on tape. He showed up during shift change. No knock. Just waited at the far corner of the lot, watching the building that wasn't there reflect off a window across the street. Waited until the man emerged from the side alley with a thermal scanner and a note tucked into his pocket. No words. Just an exchange of the sketches. Fingers brushing over graphite smudges. A nod. A question neither of them said aloud, answered anyway. No one else would believe them. Not anymore. No one who still relied on sight. 17 floors. Not counting rooftop structures. Not including sublevels. The footage confirmed it at exactly 4:32 a.m., time-stamped from a mounted camera above a liquor store that had stopped stocking its most expensive shelf due to unexplained shortages. The new floor rose without sound, just like the others, but this one arrived already finished. Window panes intact. Curtains drawn in some unit. Light behind others. Not a reflection. Not a camera glitch. Actual illumination visible behind cheap patterned fabric, the kind hospitals used when budgets ran thin and replacements came too late. No evidence of construction. No scaffolding. No cranes. Just frames caught in motion, stacked over days, reaching a height that never cast a shadow on the pavement. The top floor carried a strange stillness, different from the floors below. Surveillance caught something behind the far-right window at 4:41, movement that paused too long to be dismissed. A camera across the street, angled slightly downward due to an old mounting fault, captured it better than the rest. The face appeared between curtain folds, still, pale. Eyes open, unfocused. Not staring through the glass but just past it, as if caught mid-thought. It stayed for 3 frames. Long enough for someone watching to realize it wasn't an actor. Long enough to recognize the cheekbone curve. The scar just beneath the chin. The unmistakable tilt of someone last seen walking into a space no one else could enter. She hadn't aged. Not noticeably. But the mouth hung open slightly, as if something had been said but never finished. The drawing hand began to falter. A pencil dropped without sound. Paper smudged without correction. He walked back to the lot that evening, carrying a fresh sheet and an earlier version of the structure's south face. No destination in mind. Just motion toward confirmation. The first blackout hit half a block away. Not collapse. Not unconsciousness. Just a shortfall, time lost like spilled ink. One step missing. Another gained without crossing space. He blinked beneath a broken sign that hadn't existed 5 minutes earlier. Asphalt beneath his feet felt wrong. Not wet. Not hot. Just too flat. Eyes burned. Vision pulsed. The lot stood empty. Or it didn't. Surrounding lights blurred slightly when facing the center. Peripheral shapes began vibrating against the lens of attention. His mouth moved but no sound came. One of the corner bricks on the adjacent building shifted inward, as if something inside had exhaled too hard. He turned away quickly and found himself facing the wrong street. No memory of turning. No sense of distance. Just a complete redirection without motion. Second blackout lasted longer. Occurred while reviewing floor schematics near the South Corridor blueprint. 23 minutes gone. Recovered only after an overhead bulb shattered with no visible cause. After that, movement became dangerous. Every approach carried the risk of absence. Something erased seconds when proximity shortened. The building, as caught on tape, existed full form at 17 floors. No margin. No elevator listed. No occupants registered. But footage kept capturing movement behind the upper windows. Shifts of fabric. Dim outlines tracing the same pacing pattern over and over. One frame captured a hand. No context. Just a palm pressed against the inner glass of floor 17. 5 fingers. Short nails. A mark on the wrist that matched medical documentation from a missing persons report filed 6 weeks earlier. The scar was exact. He didn't draw that floor. Didn't trace the angles. Refused to mark the dimensions. That final elevation remained blank. Kept folded. Hidden under layers of graphite-stained sketches. He stopped using street names. Stopped carrying identification. Moved without timekeeping. The drawings, once clean and geometric, became smaller, cramped into corners of pages, symbols overlaying walls where rooms shouldn't be. Each time the building grew clearer in footage, his own sense of space narrowed. As if recognition had weight, and that weight was pulling him toward something he could not walk into without being counted. The envelope arrived without return address. Plain packaging. No seal. No message. Just a bundle of sketches folded with careful hands, each page numbered, each elevation labeled with sharp black ink, none of them signed. A newsroom intern found it under the rear gate during a cigarette break and handed it off without comment. The editor thought it was concept art. Some student portfolio. But one of the tech reporters had been following the rumors, the missing residents, the talk of a structure no one could touch. He recognized the curve of the south stairwell, the repeating gap on floor 11 where a door should have broken the pattern. He didn't verify. Just scanned them all. Posted the images on a slow Friday under the headline, "Unnamed Artist Reimagines Demolished Psychiatric Facility as Surveillance Mirage." Within hours the sketches spread. Forums lit up. The time-lapse footage resurfaced in higher resolution. Some compared the drawings to early asylum blueprints. Others claimed it proved nothing, just urban myth stapled to paranoia. But the clicks kept climbing. The files landed in inboxes belonging to names no one could trace to specific offices. Image boards debated shadow alignment. Video editors layered the footage with the drawings and found every window matched. 7 days passed. On the 8th, half the cameras lining Argus Street failed. No warning. No outage report. Just blank screens. Cafes, parking lots, crosswalks, dead feeds. Power remained, but nothing recorded. The footage that did exist stuttered in loops, skipping seconds, reversing briefly, playing with frame overlaps that made it impossible to tell whether anything was moving forward. The building stopped growing. Not gradually. Not with delay. Just ceased. Floor 17 remained visible, but no changes followed. Curtains stayed drawn. Lights stopped shifting. No new shapes behind glass. For the first time in weeks, the surveillance archive carried nothing new. The rhythm had broken. That night, just after 2, he collapsed on the steps of City Hall. Coat torn along the sleeve. Nails bloodied. Left shoe missing. No wallet. No ID. Just one item folded inside the inner pocket, a blueprint marked in red. Ink smudged where the lines should have remained sharp. A single sheet torn from a larger spread. No signature. No date. Just a drawing of floor 17, top view, scaled to match official measurement. Each room labeled with initials. Some were familiar. Some were never reported missing. Across the street, a traffic light blinked through an intersection no car had crossed in 30 minutes. Rain began minutes later, but the ink never ran. The page had already dried. The coat was still warm. The request came late, marked urgent but unsigned. Just a line of instruction buried in the maintenance log. Verify corrupted footage from subnetwork storage. No one claimed to have made the note. No follow-up email. It landed on the desk of a city worker tasked with archiving zoning records and confirming street cam calibration cycles. Not his job to recover surveillance frames. But curiosity doesn't check job titles. The files looked empty. Playback failed. Thumbnails showed black. One by one, he clicked through folders dating back 6 months. Nothing loaded. Every video file played for half a second before freezing. Audio tracks filled with static. Only one still responded. Image format. Not video. Labeled with a timestamp offset by 3 minutes from the last known growth interval. Not raw footage. Just a captured frame. Resolution low. Metadata stripped. No origin point. He opened it. 17 floors. That much was clear. The building stood in full shape. No scaffolding. No blur. Every window in place. Frame clean. Sky neutral. The kind of lighting that belongs to early morning, before the sun picks a direction. He leaned closer. Every pane dark except one. Top floor. North corner. Window open by an inch. Curtain drawn halfway. Something behind it. Not shadow. Not shape. Just a pause in the pattern. The eye notices what shouldn't move and yet doesn't. He enlarged it once. Twice. Image began to break apart, pixels softening at the edges, but detail held. A face. Not pressed against the glass. Not craning forward. Just there, inside the frame, set back from the window, no distortion in expression. Eyelids parted just enough. Hands at sides. Posture upright, unnatural in its stillness. No sign of distress. No tilt of confusion. Recognition came slowly. Hair parted right. Collar open. Tie askew. Mouth closed. Left cheek slightly tighter than the right, like a thought had gotten stuck between intention and speech. The face didn't belong to any resident. Not from the registry. Not from the missing posters. Not from the camera team. Not from the security staff. Not from the journalist who leaked the sketches. It belonged to the one who first flagged the footage. He hadn't been seen in weeks. No resignation filed. No absence recorded. His desk remained untouched. Personal effects still lined the shelf above his screen. A coffee cup sat half full beneath a stack of budget reviews. Phone turned off. Mail unopened. But there he was. Inside a window no one could touch. Inside a floor that stopped growing once he disappeared. No movement in the face. No change across the pixels. Just a direct line from lens to eyes, as if the frame had waited for someone to notice. The more the image was enhanced, the more the background blurred into nothing. No room behind him. No shadow to his left. No reflection on the glass. Only him. Watching back. Thank you for watching and sticking with me to the end. Now, if you believe humanity deserves a future among the stars, do subscribe now. Only those who'd abandon Earth to its fate will scroll past.